My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Pixel Patch. I'm a joyful geek with an expertise in gaming, both tabletop and video.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses.
And by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, mega comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Nintendo, Cinematic Universes, Marvel, DC, Justice League, is Batman, Leagues with Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain Jack, Loki, Spider-Man, and Hulk and Logan, X-Men, Battlers, Alien, Galaxy, Guardians, Star Trek, Prick, Prick, Card, and Janeway, Nerds and Geeks come gather around and join them in the Big Bad Jar, Average Joe and Pixel Patch, they peek under the microscope.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope.
Yes, and after a delicious cup of tea, that microscope is looking ready for use.
I need to try something here, okay? So just give me a minute.
All right.
Shazam!
Oh, Joe, where did you go? You're invisible. I can't see you. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It didn't work.
For the last time, I'm Average Joe.
Shazam. Ah, yes, and I am Pixel Patch. Ha, ha, ha. Why did I change into a 100-pound nerd? Dang it. Although I currently know all the rules for every board game and every tabletop game. This is great. Actually, no, I'll take it.
But so nerd, or is it a geek or a nerd in this case?
Well, in some cases, the ideal would be the nerd because then I would have all the knowledge that I need for
But then you'd be by yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I'll stick with the geek, I guess.
Okay.
My ideal needs some work. It's a platonic ideal, so it could shift.
Can you explain that again? You mentioned it last week.
So a platonic ideal, actually, it can't shift. I'm wrong about that. So a platonic ideal is that which all items draw their reality from. So if you have a tree, you can think of tree in a certain way. Like, yes, there's a 500-year-old tree in the Arctic that's like 2 feet high. That's not the ideal tree. The ideal tree we have, is the ones that kids draw. It's the one trunk, the leaves at the top. And trees take on a bunch of different variations, but there's a general ideal of tree that most people have, and that you could say is close to the platonic ideal. Or, a cupcake. Yes, you can make cupcakes a billion different ways, but there's a certain cupcake-ness that all cupcakes add to, and that ideal is like, the usual cupcake. But a platonic ideal is just like a universal idea of a thing. And when you get into the specific thing, it has some aspect of this greater ideal.
Now I want cupcakes.
Yeah, I know,
Thanks a
right?
lot.
Do you want a platonic cupcake or like a...
I don't know. Maybe the ideal of what I expect a cupcake to be would be too much for any human to actually prepare.
And just lose your mind. Or the baker would lose their mind. That'd be amazing. It's like, do it again.
We're going to shake things up a bit this week, Pixel, because we're going to actually look at all the mail first.
Oh, rattle, rattle, rattle. All right, dumping it.
So we're going to go into the bat jar and get into our mail here.
Mail call!
So this is an email we actually read on the show a few weeks ago when you weren't here, but I feel like it'd be very good for you to answer this question.
Excellent.
So Andrew Taylor sent us an email asking the question. Well, he asked a question here, but I'm going to read the whole email.
Right. So we'll go with the question.
Hey guys, I consider myself a casual fan of nerd culture, but I'm always interested in new things. I've heard a lot about D&D over the years, but never have played a game. Pixel, is it easy to get into? How would one get into it?
Okay. So having gotten into D&D in the past year myself, I actually am loving the ways that you can introduce people into. So there's 3 ways to get into D&D that I would recommend. If you want the full D&D experience, the best, absolutely hands down best way to get into it is to find someone who already knows what they're doing to run you through a game. So if you know someone who knows the rules, they can probably quickly make a character for you and you can just start adventuring. They'll teach you the basics. It's a storytelling game. So it's like, I'm going to run over there. I'm going to jump over this tree. I'm going to attack. And every single action you do, or at least most of them, you're going to roll a 20-sided dice, and the higher the roll, the better the result. So the easiest way, obviously, is getting someone who knows what they're doing. If you don't have that, or if you're trying to learn with friends, there are 2 other ways to get into it that are a little bit easier. The best way I find is to get the 5th edition starter set called The Lost Mines of Phandelver. So what that is, it's a $20 starter kit, very affordable, and it has a 20-page rule book for whoever's running the adventure, and it has like a 10-page player book, and it has pre-built character sheets. So you don't need to know how to make characters, you don't need to know anything. You just read that 20-page book, and you can pretty much start trudging your way along and learning the rules as it goes. Once again, look up for pointers online, but that is hands down the most affordable, and I think one of the most immersive and enjoyable starts to D&D, because it's a very basic adventure. You're fighting some goblins, you're solving problems in a town, like really, really fun. The other two I would only recommend if you want to get a taste of tabletop gaming. One of them is called Roll to See If I Have Shoes On. So it is a 6-rule tabletop game. Literally 6 rules. You can read it in about 20 seconds. And so you say you want to do something. You roll a 6-sided dice. If you roll a 5 or a 6, you succeed. If you roll a 6, you gain the ability of whatever you were doing. And every time you roll 6s, you gain more power. So a friend of mine opened a door. He rolled a 6. He gained door opening, level 2. He then tried to use cheese to give himself magic powers. He gained cheese magic, level 2. And after that, you just keep going, and the game gets very ridiculous very fast. And then last but not least, Dungeon World. Dungeon World is a quick, action-oriented tabletop game where creating your character is a checklist. So you get a page in front of you. You check off, okay, this is what I want my character to be. This is what I want him to start with. And this is the ability that I want him to start with. Like, okay, cool. You can only use the things that you've checked mark. Great. And then it's you just need 2 6-sided dice, and you can start playing your adventure. So that's my...
You've only been in the D&D for a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've been into tabletop games for a while. Like, I followed a lot of tabletop game things, but when I become interested in something, I study a lot of it.
I see. Well, that's very helpful. I think the only thing I would add is the way I've immersed myself in D&D is by listening to podcasts where people play D&D. Because even though I'm not familiar with the rules, I can at least enjoy the narrative and then get more of an understanding of like the complexities of the game.
Yeah. So in that case, I would recommend 3 podcasts. High Rollers, which is put together by Yogcast, if anyone knows them. They're a British comedy group, and their D&D group is called Erois. But just look up High Rollers, you'll find them. Glass Cannon, forewarning, a little bit of swearing, but their storytelling is above and beyond anything. And their series, Androids and Aliens, is cleaner and more professional because it's done about 2 years into their podcast segment, and it's a sci-fi. And then last but not least, of course, the most famous tabletop gamers, I could probably say, is Critical Role. If you do start listening to them, start in Season 2, where, once again, they have more practice, the quality of their audio is higher, and they start a new story, so you don't need to know anything that came before in order to enjoy all of the ridiculousness that they get into. That's that.
All right, well, our next piece of mail here, so we're not going to do the foghorn yet because the email we just read is technically an old piece of mail.
Okay.
So this is the first new piece of mail. So this is a comment that was made on our post this week.
Shall I read it?
Yes.
Loving the discussion of Disney and the princesses.
Sorry, who's saying this? Yeah, it's right,
okay.
It's right there.
Right. Sorry, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. There we go. Carol Riome. Thank you for messaging, Carol. Did a little digging for you about Roy Disney. The dead guy? Roy Oliver Disney was Walt's brother. His son, Roy Edward Disney. See, they got to give us middle names. Thank you, Carol. Roy Edward Disney is probably the one Miss Diz was thinking of, as he is the senior executive for a long time until his death in 2009. That makes way more sense.
Okay.
So it's not the ghost of Roy Disney's brother haunting us into the modern age.
I was right when I understood that Roy Disney was Walt Disney's nephew.
Right.
Because Roy Disney Sr. basically named his son after him, which is a common thing to do.
Yep. Just a little bit confusing.
And so the Roy Disney who was opposed to having the Disney princesses being a shared continuity was the nephew.
Right.
And he passed away in 2009. So
now we can put them in a shared continuity. Take that, Roy. Oh, I will put one more mention for the tabletop gaming thing. If you have anyone who's not a big fan of D&D because a lot of the historical baggage, which, to be honest, a lot of it is unfounded, but you can actually pick up a lot of really neutral tabletop games. There's a game called Fiasco where you're a bunch of spies. There's a game called Traveler where you're going through space. There's a really neat game called Numenera that replaces all the magic with old technology. So when you put up this giant shield to block lasers, the shield is actually this big protective shield that was on a starship. But it's been so many millennia since any of this technology was used or written down that no one actually knows what anything does. So they treat it as this kind of mystical power, but everyone knows that it's like nanites or just strange technology that you don't understand anymore. So that's a really, really good world to get into if people don't like the fantasy setting. There's a lot of really good tabletop settings that are very, very neutral and really good for storytelling.
Okay, here we go. So this is our second piece of mail this week. So
2-second mail.
So here's a Facebook message we were sent by someone named Paul Rouleau.
Paul Rouleau, please talk about George of the Jungle. Oh, buddy. Yes. Yes.
So whoever this Paul Rouleau is, I'm kind of disappointed this message is so short.
Yeah.
I guess he wants us to have George of the Jungle as a topic to go in the jar.
But I think I'm just going to do a general note about George of the Jungle. It was so dumb that my parents threw out the VHS tape, much to our dismay, and we weren't allowed to watch it.
I'm guessing you're referring to specifically the Disney movie from the 90s, because
Yes.
it's a franchise that goes back to the 60s.
Oh, yeah, of course. But I meant specifically that movie.
Okay.
The cartoon was always a ton of fun. But yeah, the George of the Jungle with Brendan Fraser was considered so detrimentally stupid to have their children watch that they tossed out the cassette one day without telling us.
Well, there you go. So George of the Jungle will go into the bat jar because, as we've said on the show before, if you take the time to send us a message about topic, we will put it in there.
It's going to put in there, like the cookies. I really hope the cookies don't go stale while we're...
And the last message we have here, I was hoping to read it last week because it's related to the Disney stuff as well, but we ran out of time. So this is a message I got from Jocelyn Frondorfer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jocelyn.
So she's the one who came up with the list of virtues that we were mentioning briefly last week.
Oh, nice.
She makes a point of saying in her message, our tendency to certain virtues may be partially rooted in our biology and partially rooted in our life situation. For example, I am an atypical female who naturally has a lot of typically male traits. Mm-hmm. In my journey as girlfriend, then wife, then mother, I have acquired many typically female virtues. I don't think there is a dichotomy between the two sets of virtues, but I believe all of the virtues are accessible to all and should be acquired by all to be the best person possible. Mm-hmm. However, I think between biology and life situation, we have a tendency and a need for certain virtues over others. In a move to close the gender gap, Disney has been recently creating princesses that exhibit typically male virtues. However, the male characters are not taking on typically female virtues.
Interesting.
They are simply being displayed without male virtue. And she says she uses Tangled as an example of that.
Nice. Yeah, well, it's definitely a double-edged sword. Like, if you have a certain personality type, you will tend towards certain virtues. Like if you're choleric, if you're sanguine. So for those listening, choleric is more of, like the quick to emotion movement kind of thing, emotions near the top. Sanguine is more like the fun loving action and like let's go have fun. Phlegmatic is the kind of laid back let's just do things the easy way. And then the last one is melancholic. These are just four classical things, but melancholic is the quieter, more reserved thought process kind of thing. These four classical ideals tend to have people tied to them who exhibit certain virtues. So if you're melancholic, you're more likely to have the virtue of temperance, etc., etc. But as she mentioned, everyone has access to every single virtue and should exhibit them, but virtues probably come more naturally to men or women at first, and then you should work to, work to have the full range of virtues. Like if you examine a group of boys and a group of girls, most of the time, the boys will be like yelling and moving around and stuff like that. Like they run into situations that need to exhibit, more physical courage, or they'll need to run into situations where they need to work on a temperance of like not losing their heads, et cetera, et cetera. But as you're growing past, past what you grow up as, past what your situation is, you should be able to develop the widest range of virtues possible in order to have a full take on virtue.
Yeah, and I think the point she makes is a valid one, illustrating that the Disney heroines that we've seen as of recent are ones that are portraying the whatever classical male virtues, but the male characters in those movies don't take on the more female virtues. So what you basically have is like everyone is portraying these like male virtues and no one's representing the female virtues. And because the female character is portraying the male virtues, you can't have the male character do that as well.
Right.
So they end up just sort of just being there and being kind of like a dummy.
So the only answer would be to have the females portray the male virtues and the males portray the female virtues, or you could just teach your children and then have the males and females exhibit both their classical virtues and a mix of the virtues of the other gender.
Yeah, but unfortunately in a lot of these movies it's not what happens. Like
Yeah.
that's a criticism people have of the newer Star Wars movies, is that in an effort to like empower these female characters, they basically make the male characters totally like dumb and like lacking in virtue of their own, like Poe Dameron in The Last Jedi.
Oh yeah.
His decision making process and he doesn't seem to be portraying any like virtues. He's just sort of there to have women tell him what to do.
And it's one of those things where you want both good male and female representation, and to do that you want heroes, and to do that they have to exhibit all the virtues, not just have a specific one represented. But it's tough. It's really tough to get that in writing, and you can only hope for the best that we will eventually have virtuous leading roles and virtuous heroes written in that exhibit the full range of virtues, which is what you would want for anyone, male or female.
So thank you, Jocelyn, for your message. Thank you to everybody else as well. We will make sure that Dungeons & Dragons and George of the Jungle and definitely some kind of Fall of the Disney Princesses go in the bat jar for future conversation.
And hey, I'll be able to teach about D&D. It'll be great.
And that was probably a good segue, talking about virtue, to transition towards today's topic, because we're talking about the new superhero movie that just came out, Shazam!
Shazam! Oh, you gotta stop yelling that. It's destroying the equipment.
Oh, yeah.
It's lightning bolt coming in. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, and we have to like say it like that because the title does have an exclamation mark at the end.
Shazam! Yeah, it's the only way to properly talk about this movie. This great movie.
But as always, we have to get back to the origins of the characters and how we first introduced ourselves to them. So, Pixel, how did you first encounter Shazam?
So I actually found out recently that the first time I ran into the character, I did not run into Shazam, but his evil counterpart, Black Adam. So I was playing a game called DC Universe Online, which was just, your classic MMORPG. You're going around fighting monsters, gaining levels in the DC universe. And in the introduction cinematic, there's a guy who yells Shazam. Who I always thought was Shazam. But apparently I was wrong, and that was a evil counterpart from the comic books called Black Adam. So I thought I knew who Shazam was, and I was so wrong.
Do you recall when you would have first actually seen Shazam proper?
It would have been in the movie trailer. Like
really?
Literally, that would have been the case. I think I did a little bit of reading into Shazam when DC Universe was a thing, and I remember seeing an old comic strip with Billy Batson and Captain Marvel side by side. So I think that was a very brief touch on it, but I never paid attention to it.
Interesting. Well, like a lot of DC characters, my first introduction to this character, we can't keep saying the name because lightning is going to keep coming in here.
And it's going to ruin everything. Yeah.
But my first exposure to Captain Marvel was through Justice League Unlimited.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
there was an episode where Captain Marvel shows up.
Oh.
And he's shown as a new recruit to the Justice League, and it's a very interesting episode because it comes at a point in the series where the Justice League is at opposition with this secret government organization that doesn't trust superheroes.
In that episode, does he transform back into Billy Batson at any point, or
Very briefly.
Okay, just as a homage kind of thing.
Yeah, like that you show him. I think they show him like once or twice turning back into a kid because what Justice League Unlimited typically shows them as their superheroes, right? They don't get into their personal lives very much. But in that show, he was voiced by Jerry O'Connell, who a lot of people would know from like being the athlete in Jerry Maguire or from Sliders or
Nice.
or whatever. But what really struck me about the character is that he had this like earnest quality about him, where he was just a good person who just, you know, he kind of saw things in black and white, and he's like, you guys shouldn't be like fighting with the government. Like he kind of comes in and it's at a point where Lex Luthor is like running for president, and Superman's like super jaded, not trusting of Lex Luthor because obvious reasons.
What? Why? Let's go into that history.
so you have Captain Marvel basically kind of being more like Superman than Superman.
And as a note, Captain Marvel was the original name for Shazam before they lost the copyright for it.
Yeah,
Let's continue.
Yeah, but all that to say, so that was my first exposure to the character.
I believe in fair play. I believe in taking people at their word and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Back home, I've come up against my share of pretty nasty bad guys, but I never had to act the way they did to win a fight. I always found another way. I guess I'm saying I like being a hero, a symbol. And that's why I'm quitting the Justice League. You don't act like heroes anymore.
As I've kind of continued on my DC lovingness, I've been exposed to him many times. He's been in a lot of shows that I've watched, and he's been in a lot of comics I've read, so I've become very familiar with Captain Marvel over the years. And this brings us, yes, to his comic book origins, because believe it or not, this character, Billy Batson, was first created in 1939.
Wow. Okay, wow.
He first appeared in Whiz Comics #2.
Okay.
It's dated for February 1940, so I assume it was published, like actually created in 39. And
When did the war start again?
Well, depending on where you lived.
38?
It started in 1939 if you lived everywhere but the States.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure other countries entered at different times.
Well,
but
I'm just wondering if it was like a reaction to the war of like seeing the world in black and white kind of thing.
and for America, it started in 1941 with Pearl Harbor.
Right.
But no, like this is basically 6 months to 8 months after Superman first debuted in Action Comics.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And what people might not realize is that he was not published by Marvel or DC originally.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was published by a third company called Fawcett Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And what is really incredible about the original Captain Marvel comics is that he actually outsold Superman.
Wow.
Like,
Why?
Because, and this is something it's something interesting to comment on the character himself. In the original comics, he was basically Superman. He had the super strength, the speed, he could fly, but he was also a kid. And as they were really developing more and more superhero characters, you know, they started introducing sidekicks. So like when Robin was introduced, he was introduced as a way for kids to imagine themselves being in the story of Batman.
Right. So in this way, he was already in the story, and kids could be like, I can be that hero.
Yeah, so instead of being the sidekick to the hero, I could like the appeal of the Captain Marvel character was like I, the child, reading this could actually just say the word and become the superhero myself.
I can only imagine what was happening in the 1940s when they were just yelling that on the streets.
That is what was the original appeal, and continues to be the appeal of this character, is that even when he transforms, he still maintains the persona of the child.
Right.
And even though he has all these superpowers, like his decision making is often influenced by his personality of him as a child. So you can imagine, I certainly imagine this as a child, actually like being able to do all these things. This concept has been borrowed by other superhero fiction, because I remember it being first illustrated in Beetleborgs.
Oh, yeah.
Because in Beetleborgs, you had three kids who, again, they transformed. They said a magic word, and they turned into fully grown adults in superhero suits.
But that did not help them make the right decisions. Oh, my gosh.
And then the company that was producing that show for America, Saban, the next year introduced it to Power Rangers. So in Power Rangers Turbo, I don't know if you ever remember. Did you ever watch Power Rangers?
I've watched some Power Rangers, but not the ones where like it was anything but kids. No, sorry, anything but adults.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Scratch that, reverse it.
Yeah. No, so in Power Rangers Turbo, they introduced a character named Justin who was a child, like a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, all the other Power Rangers were like college-age people.
Right.
But when he morphed, he turned into an adult inside his Ranger suit. And as a kid, I loved the idea because, again, I could imagine myself actually, as a child, you can't be a Power Ranger, or supposedly because you're not, grown enough in the suit to fight. But him, he had I don't know how they did it, but
the magic.
So
Power Rangers magic.
The power. Anyway, all I have to say is, so yeah, there was a time in the 40s where Captain Marvel's comics were actually outselling Superman.
Oh, that's
because
amazing.
essentially you had all the same powers of Superman, but the character was more relatable because it was actually a kid in there.
That's awesome.
And Captain Marvel is also the first superhero to get a movie made about him because he had his movie serial in 1941.
What is it, like animated, or did they try to?
No, it was live action.
Oh my gosh!
I'm not sure what it. I've seen brief clips of it.
Really? Yeah. How was it?
Where's Miss Wallace?
I don't know.
I said, where's Miss Wallace?
She ran into the woods that way.
But it's like it's funny that this is a character that is getting their first like feature film now, but in reality, in the beginning of superheroes, Captain Marvel would have probably been one of the most popular ones out there.
Yeah.
DC Comics actually tried suing Fawcett Comics over the character because they argued that he was too much like Superman and they were basically just ripping him off.
Right.
And it's a long, complicated legal history. The court case kind of went on for many, many years, and it
ended up with them owning it.
Well, basically, what happened is, by the time I guess it went to court in the mid 40s, and it was decided in like 47 in favor of Fawcett Comics.
Right.
And then DC Comics appealed it, and that went on for many years. And by the time I think it was like 1953. By that point, Fawcett Comics was like, you know what, like this isn't worth it to us. We're just gonna close shop because they weren't really. Outside of Captain Marvel, I don't think they had very many comics that they were selling.
Right.
And at that point, the comic book industry was kind of taking a dive anyway, at least for superheroes. So they just sort of gave up and like ceased publication. They made a deal outside of court.
Oh, man.
And then many years later, DC Comics actually bought the rights to all the Fawcett Comics characters, which included Captain Marvel. And as we explained a few weeks ago when we talked about the Marvel Captain Marvel movie, by the time that DC had bought the rights to Captain Marvel, Marvel Comics had introduced their Captain Marvel and had copyrighted Captain Marvel. So by the time that DC got around to having the Captain Marvel characters, they couldn't call their comic book Captain Marvel because Marvel Comics had trademarked the name Captain Marvel.
See, this is why you don't get into extended legal battles. Just solve it. Just solve the problem.
Well, it's funny. Marvel and DC actually share copyright on the term superhero.
Interesting.
I don't know how you can share a copyright, but...
You take a little bit of the superhero. I'll take a little bit of superhero.
Yeah.
No one else gets superhero.
So if you see any other companies like publishing comic books about superheroes, they'll call them like action heroes or whatever.
That's so weird.
But all I have to say, Captain Marvel has been in, like, his comic book series was referred to as Shazam from the 1970s onwards because they couldn't call it Captain Marvel.
Right.
But in the stories themselves, they still called him Captain Marvel because as far as the characters in the DC universe are concerned, he, there isn't any other Captain Marvel, so it made total sense. And, this kind of continued on until 2011. DC Comics did a huge reboot of their whole comic book franchise.
The New 52?
The New 52.
Now, is it actually 52 different heroes, or...?
At the time, there were 52 different comic books being published, so
nice.
there were definitely more than 52 characters, but 52 books.
Nice.
And in that reboot, they introduced Captain Marvel again, but they chose to just go all the way and rename him Shazam.
Nice.
Which I don't like because it's like the guy can't say his name without transforming. So it's kind of, how does that even work?
I just say the name that I've been saying.
Anyway, that's like a nitpick of mine. With the New 52 reboot, they across the whole DC line, they kind of did a lot of changes to the characters to like modernize them and make them different, I guess, so that people would be interested in reading the stories again.
Right.
And I actually read the first 10 or so issues of Shazam, very recently, like in the last couple of months. I've read them in preparation for the movie.
Nice.
It's not my favorite version of the character, and we'll get into that more with the movie because that's essentially the version they've chosen to adapt for the movie. But in the original comics, and this might be because of the times, but Billy Batson was like this, like kind of aw shucks gee whiz, kind of like really like wholesome, nice kid who was just very altruistic, and despite being an orphan who lived on the streets,
he was able to have a strong sense of morality.
Yeah, he was like a newspaper salesman or whatever, like, paper boy, and just an all-around good kid. And so then when he turns into Captain Marvel, he's just like, oh gosh, gee willikers, I'm gonna go help these people out. So there's like kind of like a wholesome fun that was there in the Captain Marvel character.
And I think I would enjoy that more. Like, that makes a lot of sense instead of like the edgy, broody modern character.
And that's the thing. So like Billy Batson in the New 52 was more jaded, and to be fair, if I had undergone the same experiences he had undergone, I probably would be a little chip on my shoulder. But they kind of made him a little meaner, and so when he does turn into an adult, he turns into more like kind of, I'm entitled and I need to like make up for all the things I've missed out on kind of teenager in an adult body. So they kind of changed the formula of like what Shazam's character is in the reboot, which, as we'll talk about, is how they've chosen to go with the movie. So a little disappointed about that. The movie was first announced originally in 2000.
Okay, wow.
So like New Line Cinema, which is like a separate studio, first got the rights to developing Captain Marvel movie in 2000.
That's happened with a few things. Like Avatar 2, I think, was announced a while ago, like back in 2006 or something.
Yeah, we don't need
it. It doesn't exist.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Give it 10 more years.
But then New Line Cinema was purchased by Warner Brothers, so now it became part of the Warner Brothers family, and kind of like a lot of movies we've talked about lately, like Alita and even Captain Marvel, there were release date changes and development issues and directors leaving and whatnot, and it really wasn't until 2016, 2017 that they finally nailed a director and a team of people to make the movie.
Nice.
With this Shazam movie, the release date had never changed, so it was always intended to come out this time of the year.
Nice.
You weren't on the episode with Captain Marvel, but that movie's release date changed 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Which makes a lot of sense.
So people find it ironic that the 2 Captain Marvel movies come out within a month of each other. That's only because the other Captain Marvel kept having her movie pushed back due to various reasons. So the guy who ended up directing this movie, his name's David Sandberg.
David Letterman?
No, not
Andy Samberg?
No, neither of those people.
Oh, dang, okay.
David F. Sandberg.
Okay.
I find him as an interesting choice for a movie like this because...
What else did he work on?
The Conjuring.
Don't know it.
Annabelle Creation.
Nope, keep going.
I think those are his biggest movies.
Okay.
I don't want to lie here.
You liar! Now the whole internet knows your name. Now all of China knows that you're lying.
Yeah, he's literally only directed 3 movies.
Oh, okay.
Including Shazam.
Interesting.
The first one was called Lights Out, and it was his directorial debut in 2016.
Okay.
Then he did Annabelle Creation, which is part of the Conjuring universe. I misspoke earlier.
Oh, okay, interesting. I still don't know what the Conjuring is. I think I have a general idea. Like, I recognize the name, but no clue.
It's a horror franchise.
Oh, well, there you go.
And then Shazam.
Oh, actually, that makes sense with some of the content of the movie.
So, yeah, and that's certainly something that when when he was announced, I was like, I don't know who this guy is, whatever. And my favorite movie YouTuber went on to explain that he is friends with James Wan.
Okay.
Because James Wan got his start in horror movies. And James Wan, of course, directed Aquaman.
Right.
And James Wan is friends with Walter Hamada because Walter Hamada is the producer of Warner Brothers that got their horror franchise started and is now involved with the DC movies. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like this. David Sandberg has this job because he's friends with a friend of the guy who's the decision maker.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah,
so
it's not what you know, it's who you know.
The moral of the story is make friends with people because you never know who they're connected to.
Yep. Could be connected.
Referrals are a big deal is what I'm trying to get at here. It was decided that this guy was going to be the director for this movie, and it seemed like an interesting choice just because he had done very little beforehand, and what he had done was horror. Mm-hmm. And from what I knew of Captain Marvel and Shazam, I didn't think it was a lot of horror. But
no, and there was definitely a more creepy vibe to the movie, which we'll go into later. But yeah, you can definitely see those roots there. And there were young children in the theater that I was in, and I was like, oh, that's That's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes.
So having said that, where do you think the critics are sitting with this one?
I'm going to say they're sitting around like 74%. Probably like a little bit of contention, but the movie itself was actually really well done.
So you weren't here a few weeks ago when I was here with Professor F.
Oh, interesting.
But we talked about how the first Rotten Tomato reveal had been done for Shazam.
Oh, okay.
And after the first like 26 critics, the movie had like 97%.
Wow. All right. That's super cool. Where's it sitting at now?
As of right now, with 262 reviews, and it's sitting at 91%.
Jeez, that's great. Yeah, no, it was a really good movie. I thought like the critics wouldn't like it, but the fans would. But yeah, no, it was a really well done movie.
What do you think the audience is saying?
Well, in that case, I'm going to say 82% for audience.
So the current audience score is at 90%.
Wow. All right, that's awesome. That's really good. So hopefully a sequel.
Yeah, well, I mean that the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Rotten Tomatoes has decided everything. Let's go.
But it does not.
It does not.
But yeah, this is another case where basically the opinions of the critics and the opinions of the audience, at least on the Rotten Tomatoes website, kind of match up. Which is nice, and certainly it shows how there are elements of the movie that make it fresh and unique that I guess people are willing to give it a good shot.
Yeah, that's really cool.
As of the time of our recording, the box office projections are not fully in yet.
Right.
So I'm going off of what the Saturday AM update is on Box Office Mojo.
Geez.
by the time this episode goes out, the real numbers will be revealed, and we'll be wrong.
You can just look it up. But where could our fans look up this information, Joe?
Well, just go to the
Joe.
website boxofficemojo.com.
There you go. See, I wouldn't know that. That's why I asked.
Okay.
All right.
So what do you think the box office was?
Okay, I'm going to say it's currently at 18 million.
Wow, such low expectations. That's less than Alita Battle Angel.
Oh, wait. Well, the whole weekend hasn't been done yet.
Well, I'm sorry. How much do you think it's going to make this weekend?
Oh, gosh, 41 million? I don't know.
Okay. It's projecting to earn around 55 million.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Oh, I thought you meant like what would happen so far. So what's our current? Oh, that's just a projection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can do all the fancy math based on how it did Thursday night and Friday night to project how it's going to go the rest of the weekend.
I do like fancy math. Fancy math is a good kind of math.
Yeah. So it also has an A cinema score.
Nice.
Which means it's like one of the highest grades a movie can get on that platform. It's kind of disappointing for me to like see these numbers because it's like Marvel's Captain Marvel made like 150 something million its opening weekend.
Right.
Whereas this one's only making 55 million.
Whereas if the roles were reversed, this one probably would have made even more inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And you think, well, it definitely is the case that a lot of the money Captain Marvel made is because they released it between Infinity War and Endgame.
Right.
But even beyond that, it still makes me sad that like the audience for the Marvel Captain Marvel is like almost 3 times the size of the DC Captain Marvel. Yeah. It's just evocative of how well Marvel's done building their franchise and building excitement, whereas DC has floundered.
Flounder. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, you hope that DC starts kind of getting, like, they are still operating as kind of a niche interest of like people who really like comics and like they really like DC. Like, this is our brand, this is our thing, whereas Marvel went more for the flash and guns and trying to cater to a large audience kind of thing, whereas DC, like, I think tried it but stuck to their darker roots a little bit more.
Oh yeah, that's a whole conversation for another day. But
yeah.
All I have to say, here we are, Shazam is now a movie, and you should tell us what happens in it.
All right.
Tell me, how old are you? Basically 15.
You cannot tell anybody about this.
Is she even good at keeping secrets?
Moderate.
No.
Gentlemen!
You have bullet immunity!
You're welcome for not getting robbed! Shazam.
So Shazam is a movie about a young orphan child who gains the power of this ancient wizard who has been keeping evil creatures at bay for centuries, trying to find one good person to pass on his powers. He is unable to, passes it on to Billy, and Billy has to fight against a character who has also been chosen by these evil creatures that were being kept aside. And that whole battle leads him to growing into his powers and learning more about being a part of a true family.
I have a note here. I said it reminded me of the first Spider-Man movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah.
And actually the first couple Spider-Man movies, in the sense that there is kind of like not a cheesy quality, but like a...
Oh no, definitely a cheesy quality, like a high quality cheesy quality, like a Bourget or like a smoked cheese, but definitely some cheese.
Well, it's just I don't know how else to describe it other than cheesy, just like an altruistic sense of wish fulfillment and children really being able to like identify with the characters. And the director of the Spider-Man movies, Sam Raimi, also got a start in horror.
Oh yeah, Sam Raimi's like famous for horror, like crazy. Even I know that. That's crazy.
And so there's certainly moments in those movies where essentially those horror roots really show up. Mm-hmm. And there are moments in this movie where this director's horror experience really shows up.
Can we go into that a little bit? Into Spoilerverse?
No, we'll save that for the Spoilerverse.
Okay, cool.
But all I had to say, it just made me it reminded me of those Spider-Man movies, and there's other random things too. Like there's extras that are like on like being shown for no reason, like in the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, there was like two characters that I was just like, who was that? And then you just never see them again. I was like, oh, okay, like I guess.
There was here I have written down gleeful charm. That's how I would describe the connection to the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, like Spider-Man, just every way. Like what was it? Walking on Sunshine at one point, is say, "Ain't nothing gonna break in my stride," and it's just like Spider-Man having a good feel-good moment and just walking along, and then it's back to like Spidey having the crap beaten out of him, kind of thing.
I think you're thinking of Raindrops Keep Falling on My
There
Head.
you go. One of those like dripping with honey, joyful songs.
Yeah, and like the old Spider-Man movies, there were kind of moments where my analytical brain kind of took over, and it's like, okay, that doesn't make sense, or that's kind of a bit of a plot hole. Like I feel like the CinemaSins people will have a field day with this movie when it gets released on home video.
Oh yeah.
But all I have to say, it's a good thing that it reminds me of the Spider-Man movies,
because originally when you went to see the first and second Spider-Man movies, like it was a fun time. Like superheroes were becoming a thing. You'll need a hero to save us. Anyways, Nickelback was still not annoying. It was a good time.
And this is really a nitpick, but there's some actor in this movie, they don't look the age of the character they're supposed to be.
Oh, interesting. Let's see. If I don't know the characters, it's kind of difficult.
No, I just mean like they tell us this character's supposed to be 17. I'm like, they do not look 17. They look way older than that.
Interesting. Is it his older sister?
No.
Okay.
One of the people I follow on YouTube, when the first trailer for Shazam came out, they commented that they didn't feel like Asher Angel, the actor who plays Billy Batson, and
right.
Zachary Levi, who plays Shazam, were the same person.
Right.
They felt that there was like a disconnect, like they didn't actually seem like, if anything, the actor who plays Freddy seemed like the child version of Zachary Levi instead. And when it came down to actually watching the movie, it did feel like there was still a bit of that disconnect, as if I had a hard time believing that Zachary Levi was supposed to just basically be the older version of Asher Angel.
Right.
It definitely seemed like he was
an alter ego kind of thing. Like he didn't match him up well, and like he tried. He definitely did a pretty good job of like matching his like some of his mannerisms, but there were moments where I was just like almost got
it
there.
Almost felt like when he turned into Shazam, he turned into a different person.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how the character's not supposed to work. Like that's part of the idea, is that you're supposed to maintain the personality of the person you were before.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just a limitation on Zachary Levi's acting ability, where he can only be, I'm Zachary Levi.
I'm a big goof. Actually, I'm really excited to see Chuck now that I've seen this movie. But anyways, let us continue.
Do you agree with that comment?
Yeah. Like I'd say he gets there about like 80%. Like there's definitely 80% of like some of the matchup and things, but I think there's like a 20% where there's just a complete desync. And if that was the case while piloting a Jaeger, it just wouldn't work. But since we're not piloting a Jaeger, I'll believe it. It's fine.
Yeah, and I'm sure people who haven't heard of the Shazam character before are listening to this and they're thinking, this just sounds like the movie Big.
What is Big?
It's a movie from the 80s where a child turns into Tom Hanks, basically.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I haven't seen it myself. I've seen clips from it. There's this very famous scene where they kind of jump on this like giant piano keyboard thing that lights up and it makes sounds.
And that happens in
in Big.
Oh, okay. So is that was that a joke reference then?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to affirm you, anyone who's listening, Shazam is more than Big with superpowers.
Yeah.
And as we've spoken of, Captain Marvel / Shazam's been around since the 30s. So if I hear anyone coming out and saying this is just a ripoff of Big, I will come after you.
Big is a ripoff of Shazam.
Yes.
Tom Hanks doesn't have enough powers to be Shazam, so they made Big. They gave him a piano, so it would be funny.
Because, and 13 going on 30 is another example of this where have you seen that one?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, so yeah.
So it's another one of those movies where a child turns into an adult.
Right.
And they initially are all caught up in like the freedom and the suggested freedom and the power that you have as an adult that you don't have as a child. Mm-hmm. But then they start to really understand the complexities and the challenges that come with being an adult, and that's kind of like becomes the whole moral of the story.
Morale.
And that's certainly, there's elements of that in this film.
The Miles Morales of the story?
Oh,
all right. Keep going.
There definitely is an element of that to this, but again, I want to affirm it is not just Big with the superhero in it.
No, it's definitely its own story. That they've got some really good bits and pieces about like where you belong, and some of the choices that lead the character to actually making realizations aren't as poignant or as strong as you might want, but it's still a good story and it's still a good amount of fun. But once again, I wouldn't bring younger children to it. We'll go into more of that later.
And that was what made it jarring for me because the movie was so funny. Like when it was doing its comedy bits, I was laughing my face off.
It was good.
It's a common thing for me to be laughing at a movie, but
no, it had some like it didn't have Into the Spider-Verse level comedy, but I was given some good chuckles. There were moments where I would my whole body would just tense up with laughter. Like it was really, really good.
And some of the jokes are actually like send-ups to the superhero franchise. Like there's jokes of kind of like not making fun of the superhero movie, but certainly like kind of poking fun at it, I would say. Mm-hmm. And considering we live in an era where Deadpool's been a thing and like so many other movies have come around to like poke fun at superhero movies, it's amazing that there's anything left to make fun of. But they find things that are new and unique in that way, and I was impressed by that.
It was really weird because during the first 20 minutes of the movie, I forgot that I was first 10 minutes of the movie, I forgot that I was watching a DC Universe movie, and then this kid pulls out Batman memorabilia and Superman memorabilia, and I was like, oh right, I'm in the DC universe. I was really confused for a minute. I was like, why does he have like these replicas of like superhero stuff? Like he's got a real superhero, right? Oh right, these are real superheroes in his universe.
Yeah, and that's certainly a credit to this film, is that it continues the tonal shift that Aquaman started, where the DC movies are becoming more fun and less brooding, and this one doesn't really have any direct cameos or appearances from other DC superheroes, but you really get a sense of what the world is like for people living on the ground. And in this case, they're in Philadelphia, but you see a lot of people wearing superhero merchandise. It's in the stores.
We're in Philly. We like our superheroes. Yeah. You want some water? All right.
I'm thankful the marketing didn't spoil the movie for me.
I cannot stress this enough. Marketing does a horrible job most of the time of trailers and just like, all right, great, I don't need to go see the movie now. There were some great moments that weren't shown in the trailer.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is Shazam only really had one trailer.
Yeah.
Your typical movie now has like 2 or 3 different trailers.
Or 5 or 6.
Yeah, or like give away so much of the story. But
we want to see the movie. Like, you're not going to convince us with more information.
Yeah, and the Shazam trailer, the real one trailer we got, it shows you a lot of stuff that's in the movie, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
And stuff I didn't expect. So and I was happy I didn't get spoiled. I got spoiled for one thing, but that was because of Funko Pops, and we'll get into that later.
Interesting. Okay.
It was all Florida's fault.
Dang it, Florida. We like superhero merchandise. You want to buy it? No, wait, that's not
This
Florida.
film was actually made in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
It was filmed in Toronto mostly. So
of the Scott Pilgrim ilk.
Yes.
Toronto is a very New York-looking city. New York.
Yeah.
It's very New York-looking city.
It's the second DC movie to film there after Suicide Squad.
Oh, geez. So they finally redeemed themselves?
Oh, wow.
Low blow.
But all that to say, one thing I did know about the movie before seeing it was that it was set at Christmas.
I didn't know that either.
I did know that.
Oh, I didn't.
Set photos and whatnot showed snow and Christmassy stuff.
Okay.
So there we go. We have a new C-type Christmas movie.
Wow. After how many years? Well, C-type Christmas movie in the superhero universe?
Or just in general. Like, I can't remember the last time I saw a movie that was set at Christmas that wasn't about Christmas.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
It was a big thing in like the 80s and early 90s, but not really as much now. Iron Man 3 is the last one that I remember seeing, and that we
don't talk about that.
Yeah, let's not talk about Iron Man 3.
Mr. President, we don't talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm thankful that it's certainly there, and I'm thankful that now I could probably say I have a new favorite C-type Christmas movie.
And also, I was kind of thrown off by some of the like holiday cheer. Like, can we talk about Santa Claus?
Santa Claus has a role in the movie,
and
a couple of different Santas.
Yeah, and they are really potty mouthy at certain point, like because they're freaking out, and superhero stuff's happening around them, and they're in mortal peril. But like, you get some swearing Santa Claus, and I don't know how to feel about it.
I didn't mind.
I just thought it was weird. I was like, oh man.
Well, there's some good humor with the Santa stuff too.
But
like
anyway. You have a superhero who is this mythical figure, and then you've got Santa Claus, who in this universe is not really Santa Claus, and it's just funny to see them side by side.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier how the movie really draws influence from the New 52 era.
Which, okay, honestly, just sounds like a band name. And introducing the New 52. Every time you say it, that's what I'm going to think about.
So when I actually did read those Shazam comics earlier this year, I thought it was a good story. I thought it was interesting. My critique is that Billy is less altruistic and
more broody.
Yeah, more broody than he was.
You should call him Broody Batson.
Whoa. But all that to say, like, this is, I would say, a very close adaptation. Like, there are moments and characters they look exactly as they do in the books.
Right.
So in that sense, I can respect the fact that they went as faithful as they did to
the Shazam outfit is fantastic, like absolutely fantastic.
People were mean about it originally.
Really?
When the set photos were coming out, they said that he looked super padded, and it definitely is padded.
Well, yeah, but that's the whole point. He's just this like ideal human being. You're not gonna have someone jack themselves up like that just for the role.
He did put on 20 pounds of muscle.
Okay, yeah. Well, so there you go.
But but it was still padded.
That's fine. It's more than fine.
I'm just saying, I don't think Henry Cavill's suit's padded, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, all that to say, so if you are a fan of the New 52 comics and you've actually read those stories about Shazam, the movie is very faithful to them.
Yeah.
I got to give some shout-outs here to the child actors in the movie.
They did really good.
Yeah, I wasn't annoyed.
Yeah, no, Darla was close, but even then she was more...
Oh, she was so cute.
She was more, as I said, it was close,
okay.
But she was more adorable than she was irritating. And there were definitely moments where you're just like, aw, like your heart goes out for them. One of the quieter foster kids, which we'll go into more in the spoilerverse, was one of my favorites. Because I just didn't know what his deal was the whole time. But yeah, no, it was really, really good.
I got to give shout-outs to some kind of comic book actors who've been in a lot of stuff. So John Glover is in this movie. He plays Dr. Sivana's father.
Oh, okay, nice.
So he's been in a lot of DC stuff over the years. He was the mad scientist in Batman and Robin, the one who gives Poison Ivy her powers.
Oh my, no way.
He was the voice of the Riddler on Batman the Animated Series.
Okay.
And he was also Lionel Luthor on Smallville.
That's so weird.
So that's Lex Luthor's father.
Nice, that's super cool.
So this is his fourth appearance in the DC canon.
They just like picking him up, or just like...
Well, I guess he's just open to reappearing.
There is a zombie movie coming out, which I'll talk to you more after the show, but it is stacked with really, really good actors like Adam Driver and what's his face from Ghostbusters, main Ghostbusters actor.
Bill Murray?
Yeah, Bill Murray. Anyways, we'll go more into that later.
And the other actor I want to give a shout out to is Mark Strong. He plays Dr. Sivana in the movie.
Okay, yes. I actually do really like him as an actor.
And this is his fifth comic book film.
Was he Lex Luthor in the not current Spider-Man?
That was Kevin Spacey.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Mark Strong was Sinestro in the Green Lantern movie.
One second. Trying to think about it.
Sinestro's like the pink skinned guy with the mustache.
No, that wasn't him.
Yeah, that was Mark Strong.
No.
Yep.
No.
He played the mobster in Kick-Ass.
Okay, yes.
And he was in both Kingsman movies, which are based on comic books as well.
Yes.
So this is his fifth comic book film.
That's actually really, really cool. Oh, I really enjoy him as an actor. Like, he's just got this kind of gravitas to him that makes me take him more seriously. And in this case, as a villain. because I don't know what it is, but most times superhero movies can't get their villains right, and I feel like laughing at them more than I fear them. Like, I think Thanos was the first successful villain in my eyes that I felt was dangerous. Like, Ultron kind of felt like a lost little puppet. Whiny Child was Guardians of the Galaxy's villain. Like, Thanos was like a true villain, but he did pretty good.
Yeah, Dr. Sivana is a very, like, he's intimidating. He has a good motivation, and you're kind of scared of him as well.
Yeah. No, so it's pretty cool.
Well done in the villain department. This is described by some critics as like a Return of the Dark family film, like back to like things like Gremlins.
Oh, geez, Gremlins was a family film.
Yeah.
And then Furbies came along, so yeah, I guess that makes sense. But, geez.
In the 80s, there were movies like Gremlins and The Temple of Doom that actually caused them to create the PG-13 rating because they realized there were movies that were not that because they used to be just PG and then R.
Right.
So they created PG-13 as
it's kind of like a middle ground. It's like there will be some swearing and some blood.
Yeah.
Bring your children if you need to.
Yeah. So this is kind of a return to that, even like the kind of like Stranger Things kind of, because Stranger Things is a callback to those 80s movies. And
and that makes a lot of sense. Like, the creature is frightening, but your children want to watch Stranger Things. Like, that is definitely like right up there. But yeah, they've got some scary stuff.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting that Shazam's kind of bringing that kind of movie back, because it certainly seemed to have disappeared there for a while. Like, the gap between what's meant for children, what's meant for adults was, unless it was Disney, was just getting wider and wider.
Yeah.
And so now this is kind of bringing it back in a way, which I'm okay with.
We'll go into a bit more why people should now also start checking the movies ahead of time, but trailers don't show everything.
Exactly, and now that's that time to go into the spoilerverse.
Into the spoilerverse.
Let's get on that subway car. All right, so among the spoiler things, we can talk about the horror stuff first.
Yeah, let's talk about the horror stuff. That seems to be a really good starting point.
The 7 deadly sins are in this movie.
Yep.
Or at least a representation of them.
I still don't know which one lust is. I caught on to gluttony pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, in the comics, they're actually like each a different character, and like they're not like some of the changes they did make from the comics are like Dr. Sivana doesn't really have superpowers in the comics.
He doesn't?
He doesn't.
I thought he was like super good at math and could make things happen.
Well, yeah, he's a smart guy, but he doesn't have super strength and flight and everything like that.
Okay,
he's like, He was like one of the original mad scientist superheroes.
You know what the 7 deadly sins reminded me of? In a bad way, unfortunately. They reminded me of the creatures released in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 2012 with like the 3D animated one.
That's 2007.
2007. Wow, okay. I am dating myself.
But I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like they just seemed like all the same character, just with slightly different proportions.
Yeah, different designs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for what they used them for in the movie, I think they did fine. But in the comics, they are individual characters that look different.
Okay, good.
And I think at least one of them is female in the comics, but
that would make sense. Probably Lust, or maybe Envy.
I don't know.
Well, that's the classic. Like, that's just the thing.
I mean, outside of Envy, you really didn't like get any characterization of them.
No,
but they were used to great effect to show Dr. Sivana as a villain.
Yeah,
because there's the boardroom scene where he literally murders his father and brother.
Yeah, so at that moment, I was kind of afraid for the kids. Like, there was definitely a 6-year-old in the theater, and this guy's neck gets snapped. There's a guy whose face gets grabbed, ripped, and then thrown out a window. Like, there's some intense stuff. Like, at one point, there's a person falling from the end of a bus to the front of the bus, crashes through the window, and, like, a little bit of blood spats out. Like, there's some very intense physical violence.
But again, 30 years ago, that
was the norm.
Yeah, that was just what was in a PG movie,
right?
Before they invented PG-13. So it's more than what I guess movies of late have done.
Yeah,
and so it's certainly like bringing that back. But it kind of makes it real. It's like if this because there's the problem that a lot of PG-13 movies run into is that they portray the stuff that would be actually very bloody and very dangerous without it.
Right.
And so, like, I know it happened in my case. Like, I started imagining, like, oh yeah, I can just jump out of a moving vehicle and get up and be fine.
Nope.
But certainly, like,
is that how you broke both your legs? I was talking about the wheelchair today.
The boardroom scene certainly reminded me of the Spider-Man movie as well, because there's certainly a scene where, like, Norman Osborn goes into the boardroom like, "You're out," and then he's like,
just guns them down. Yeah, and the bombs. Oh man, yeah. Like, what was it when Harry, like, only reference to Spider-Man 3 I'll make, he like takes the bomb, throws it back, and explodes right in Harry's face. Like, you know, there's some moments of very gritty.
But I think those moments of horror, especially that boardroom scene, like showed you how dangerous Sivana was as a villain.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we lose out on that on the cotton candy villains of like, yeah, they'll get defeated in the end and they're killing some people, but you never really understand the true cost of it.
Yeah. And I thought Sivana's motivations were interesting. The fact that he was summoned before the wizard as a child and was deemed unworthy, and so he kind of becomes obsessed with finding the wizard again, and he's from this family where basically he's kind of looked down upon anyway and told he's not good enough.
Yeah, and it's this really cool, ties into the idea of virtue throughout the end. Once again, virtue, that seems to be a theme today, ties into this virtue of the film. It's just like, if you're told you're not good enough time and time again, just like Billy Batson, you know, foster homes, you weren't good enough because he was abandoned by his parents, you know, that can really work on malforming your ability to believe in yourself. But you have to realize that other people's opinions of you isn't the source of what you should think about yourself. And so with Sivana, you know, he became twisted and resentful instead of trying to work past what people thought of him. Billy Batson initially had that, but worked past it and accepted the fact that maybe people actually cared. So it was really, really neat.
And then that comes into with Billy's mom.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, so Billy gets abandoned as a child, and he gets lost from his mom in a fairground and just thinks that she doesn't find him. But she sees him being taken care of by the police, and she's like, I think they could do a better job than I can, and just pieces out. Like, probably happens. Like, there's the people like, my dad left for cigarettes and never came back kind of thing. Like, it's really intense, and it sucks, and you often think that you're to blame for it.
Yeah, I saw this movie with Dr. What and T.C. Laff, and she's pregnant with her first child, and she was like, had no sympathy for the mom. Yeah. She was like, that is like morally reprehensible to just abandon a child
100%.
like that.
But it does happen, and people feel like it's their fault, and even if they grow up as adults and work past that, there's still a lot of that, like, it's my fault, and psychologically left over. So you have to really go back. Like, if this movie strikes you because of things like that, you should work on going back and starting to confront those fears, because, you know, you are better than what people think of you. And if things from the past have hurt you, like, you really need to go into those moments and work on healing those moments, because that'll help you grow into what you are now.
Yeah, and I should clarify, T.C. Laff's kind of judgment of Billy's mom came more so from the scene where they reunite in present day.
Yeah.
And she was just like, it's not a good time for me. And it's like, this is your son.
Like, life isn't about it's a good time for you or not. Like, life happens. Like, there are worse things than taking care of a child.
And it's sort of, it's sad because it's like Billy's kind of put so much stock in, oh, when I find my mom, things will be better and we'll be a family again. And she doesn't want that. And I think it's also alluding to the fact that she's in an abusive relationship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some screams coming from the apartment and stuff.
It's a little tragic there. And I loved how he gave her the little globe. He's like, you knew this, or the compass. He's like, you knew this more than I was like,
yeah, because it's like, one day you will find your way. You'll always find your way, is what she told him when she originally gave him the compass. Like, it was just so... yeah, that was really tugged at the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, but I like what you're saying about like the whole idea of like trying to accept that you can be loved. I think that certainly comes out with his foster family.
Yeah.
Who were a wonderful group of people.
They were absolutely amazing. The dad, actually, I recognized his kind of big-heartedness. I think I'll go with that. In some of the people that I knew, I was just like, man, I really enjoy this actor. He reminds me of the people who I found a lot of joy with in my life. Like, you know, they know that life isn't the best, but they try to make the best of it.
Yeah, and certainly this movie does a good job of portraying the heroism of foster parenting.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening to this and is a foster parent, thank you for what you do. I'm more aware now of like what value you bring to the lives of children.
Yeah, because you're working with and you're trying to heal some huge hurts. And that requires a lot of work and heroism in its own stead. So like, amazing. Yeah.
in the comic, the New 52 comic, the kids are all multicultural as well. So that's,
Okay.
The fact that they're all representative of different races is from the comic as well. So I find that a little cheesy, the fact that, they just happen to adopt one child from every major ethnic group.
Like it's what are the chances kind of moment, but you kind of breeze past it after a little bit. I was really questioning though the young Asian child Eugene had access to Razor tech. It's like super like $1,000, several $1,000 technology, and I don't know how he got his hands on it. Like, you can't explain it away because of his culture. Like, that doesn't work. That's thousands of dollars. Where's this foster kid buying Razor tech from?
Did you enjoy the shout-outs to like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter?
Oh, yeah, 100%. That was great.
I mean, if I was an adult with superpowers and could do electricity, I'd probably go
Hadouken
or like Kamehameha or whatever.
Yeah.
But so I was spoiled by Funko because when I was in Florida, I went to a Hot Topic and they had Shazam.
Siblings?
They had Shazam Funkos and they had one of Pedro as an adult with the Shazam suit, and I was like, either this is just tie-in merchandise or they actually go there in the movie, because in the comic I read they go there, like they give them all the powers and the suits or whatever.
Right. In the comic, do they each have a different aspect of his power? Or do they have the full complement of powers?
I think it's the way it is in the movie where they each have different powers.
Nice. Okay.
So I was hoping, okay, either this is a spoiler and this does happen in the movie, or it's just tie-in material, and sure enough, it actually is in the movie. So what did you think about that? Were you surprised when that ended up happening?
I was really happy that it happened, and I was super surprised. I was like, I thought he was going to teleport them away using the staff, and they were going to find some like secret way of defeating him. But I did enjoy like the whole split up with the powers. Although I was really curious how the oldest would age, because I was like, they're almost technically that age anyways, but they did age them. Darla's character as a full-grown woman with a 6-year-old like cadence of speech and vocabulary was the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, they were good. See, they were a good match.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that one was really good. And the older character who was the child who was helping him discover his powers. Freddy's older alter ego.
That's Adam Brody.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
From like the OC. You remember that?
Nope, don't remember it at all. But he was a really good match for him.
Yeah, that kid's from Stranger Things. The boy who plays Freddy as a child.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot.
No,
of sense.
sorry, he's from It. He's from the new It movie.
Oh, okay. No,
I got all this stuff confused.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, there is a Stranger Things child in It, so it's totally fine.
There's a Stranger Things child in It, and there's an It child in Shazam.
Yeah, there you go. Got it.
And again, that's evocative of the Captain Marvel comics, because in the old Captain Marvel comics, he had a bunch of people in his like family that also got powers from him.
Right.
They were all Caucasian.
Right.
So the New 52 really went all the way to make it more inclusive and basically like, let's everyone become a Shazam.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
and it works.
Yeah, and I think it'll be cool if they continue going forward, like if they can still get the powers.
Because he did break the staff, so.
They do a call out to Black Adam.
Where? I was looking for it.
So when and at the beginning of the movie, when Shazam is talking to young Savannah,
okay,
he mentions that I chose a champion once and he betrayed us, and now I'm much more selective with how I choose my champions.
Oh, because I thought it was back in the day, like hundreds of years ago.
It was. That's the thing. So like, Black Adam's origins are in ancient Egypt.
Okay, and he's just been surviving this long?
Yeah.
What? That doesn't make sense. You still have a normal human lifespan as Shazam.
I don't know.
So Billy's like...
I don't know, but I don't...
Because that's...
There must be an explanation as to why Black Adam is still alive.
He said Shazam and then entombed himself for 1,000 years.
Yeah, but all I'd say, so like that's the shout out they make to Black Adam is like saying, so like the reason why the wizard Shazam spends so much more time choosing his champions because he got burned.
That's so
by
weird.
Black Adam.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And when in the development for the Shazam movie, they announced they had cast The Rock as Black Adam.
Right.
So.
That would be super cool.
Do you think it was a good idea they chose to not include Black Adam in the first movie?
Yeah, it kind of would have overshadowed it. Like, I'm very curious. Now that Zachary Levi's in his own character and you've had a movie with him, now it'll be fun to see them kind of fight. Him and Savannah are a better match than him and The Rock. Although I could have said...
Well, Black Adam's probably going to get his own...
smell what Black Adam is cooking?
He's going to get his own movie.
Oh, really?
And then that'll lead into like them kind of coming at each other in the sequel.
I'm excited for that. Like, I do like the Shazam stuff.
Shazamiverse.
Shazamiverse. I like the Shazamiverse, and it's pretty good.
Now, I brought up the whole dark family film thing and non-spoilers. Do you think it's too dark?
I'd say under 8, and maybe even under 10. It's pretty dark. Like, so I work in kids entertainment, and we have escape rooms that have like booming wizard voices and stuff like that. And I have children who are like 7 or 8 crying when these voices come on. I'm sorry, but this movie is way too dark for 7 and 8-year-olds. Like, you're like, yeah, sure, bring your kid to it. They'll laugh at the good parts, but they're probably gonna cry and want to go out during the creepy creature parts. Like, there's some very intense. There's some very gritty physical violence.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I felt the bullies were pretty stereotypical. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Oh, yeah. Like, they hit the kid with the cane with their truck. Like, what the crap? Like, you will be arrested.
Also, what is up with that school? It seems like it's like, how, like, what is
there's
it like a K-12 or something?
Well, no, there's a lot of schools in the U.S. now that have metal detectors and stuff.
No, I meant like the students, like Darla's there, but also these bullies are at the same
yeah,
school?
like it's just like an everything school. Like, there's so few kids that are going to this one that they're just throwing them all together.
I was just like that was the kind of thing I was like, that seems really strange. Like, I'm sure CinemaSins will comment on this. And the fact that, like, I'm sorry, the actor who plays Billy's mom does not look like she was 17 in the opening scene.
Oh, yeah. When she said 17, I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. I was like, ugh. And then also, like, as much as I loved having John Glover play Savannah's father, in present day, there did not look like there was enough of an age gap.
No, he's like, he's 30 years older and he's 5 years older? All right.
Yeah, I was like, they don't... Yeah.
I lost my legs, so I stopped aging. What? No, that's not how that works.
Anyway, I had a hard time just suspending my disbelief for that.
Yeah.
People transforming by saying the word Shazam I had no problem with, but it's like...
No, but people not aging properly as they should is a bit of a problem.
One of Shazam's powers is the wisdom of Solomon. And
I don't get it, because Billy Batson is not showing any of that. Like, is it moments of insight?
I think so. Like, I've seen one comic where the way Captain Marvel explains it, he said, "Oh, like these things just come to me."
Right.
And that's like the wisdom of Solomon.
That makes sense. But yeah, no, it's not a constant superpower. It's not as constant as his bulletproofness. Yeah. If he had bulletproofness the way that he had the wisdom of Solomon, he would have died.
Yes. But it was strange because the wizard literally calls out all the powers as Billy's getting transformed. And,
right.
And then they're like, well, what are your powers? Like, I don't know. And it's like, did you not hear him say all this stuff?
I was kind of confused. There was a lot going on. There was lightning. I was being transformed. I was freaking out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, hey, he doesn't have teleportation, but he does have secret fire resistance.
Yes, fire immunity.
Fire immunity. That was a great moment.
Yeah, I am assuming that because he was kind of just getting into the powers, he was figuring it out and doesn't understand it all fully yet.
Yeah, and like what kid knows what the powers of Zeus are, other than lightning?
There were some fun Easter eggs in the movie.
Okay, yeah, bring them in because I have no clue.
So, like, the school they went to was called Fawcett, in reference to Fawcett
Comics.
Fawcett
Comics. That's
and
amazing.
Originally, he lived in, when they put him in DC Universe, they had him live in Fawcett City.
Okay.
Now he lives in Philadelphia, but
Philly.
So there was that.
Philly.
The other big comic book Easter egg I noticed is that they referred to Billy Batson's birth father as C.C. Batson.
Okay, which is
a reference to C.C. Beck, who was the original artist of Captain Marvel.
Oh, neat. Okay, cool. And then the piano from Big. That's pretty neat.
From Big.
I now have to watch Big because I want to see another piano moment.
And like a lot of the Batman and Superman merchandise is modeled after the Justice League movies, like the Superman logo and the Batman logo, and like the Batarang is quite literally one of those Batarangs that Ben Affleck was using.
That's super cool. Okay, that makes sense.
But then they also had other Batman Superman merchandise that was like more
from
like
different universes.
It was like, okay, I guess in this universe, the marketing people are making all this stuff,
and they would. Let's be honest, they would make like 80 different versions of stuff.
Like I'm Batman. Get a Batman. That part killed me.
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
And then, of course, the biggest comic book Easter egg that's kind of setting up the sequel is Mr. Mind.
So who is that one?
That's the worm.
Yeah, okay. What is that? So, it's not the worm itself.
No, it is.
Why would he keep something dangerous like that in the...
Because he was encaptured in that thing. So, yeah.
Mr. Mind can't break out of glass?
No. Mr. Mind is one of Captain Marvel's original villains.
Okay.
And he's literally this super intelligent worm with psychic powers.
Oh my gosh.
The Captain Marvel comics were really weird, but they were also awesome. And
I mean, I'll take it.
there was also a tiger named Tawny the tiger, who was bipedular and wore suits and whatnot.
It's great!
Kind of like that. And they reference him in the movie too, because like the buckles on his cape are tigers.
Right.
And then of course there's that scene where he gives
He's
the
a
girl
tiger.
a tiger.
Oh, okay. That's super neat. I like these.
But Mr. Mind, what I'm impressed by is that we've gotten to the point where they're literally going full comic book with stuff like this.
It's like, yeah, there's a psychic caterpillar, and he's coming to kill you. You're like, okay, I accept.
Yeah, like 15 years ago, they would have like Mr. Mind would have been a human character with kind of round glasses and maybe like a caterpillar sticker on his shirt or something.
Oh man, wow, that was perfect. That's exactly what would have happened.
But now we're getting to the point with comic book movies where
if this was the character, we're gonna make him.
Yeah, and I just love that. And David Sandberg, the director, did the voice of Mr. Mind for the post-credit scene he's in.
Nice, Andy Samberg. I love that actor.
No, it's not. Did you find it weird or unbelievable that this worm was?
I just don't understand how he didn't break out of glass. Like, other than that, like, I thought that when the worm had broken out, some other creature had attached the little speaky thing to him.
Okay.
And then now he was being able to talk through the worm, who already had some kind of power. But if the worm was of itself, I guess it's anti-psychic glass. I still can't get over the glass. Why is the wizard keeping him in a glass jar? Okay, we're good.
Fair enough. And of course, Superman shows up in a really funny way at the end.
Oh gosh, they don't show his face. He just kind of walks in, and it's his chest. And Freddy's been wanting to meet Superman just to kind of prove that he's not, making all this stuff up about knowing the Red Tornado. But he just looks and sees Superman, and he's like,
And they couldn't actually use Henry Cavill because he's like currently renegotiating with Warner Brothers to be in future movies. So
oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm glad they found a way to include Superman without having to include the actor.
Yeah.
So well done there.
And then, so yeah, like Freddy just, I don't know, like I think Billy kind of put it in a really good way. It's just like, wow, like you have these set of rules unless it helps you out. Like Freddy seemed to be pretty much in control, pretty much comfortable with his own level of just like nerdiness and geekiness and like the troubles that he had and his impairments. Like he was okay, and then Billy had these powers, and then Freddy just loses it. But I think it's the same way of anyone in the audience wanting Billy's powers. It's just like, I could have had those powers, like that could have been me. Freddy's plight kind of makes more sense.
Okay. I'm happy you explained it like that, because when I was watching the movie, I was like, you were totally fine with being disabled earlier. I don't know why all of a sudden you're so up in arms about it, but the way you explained it makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like the same way that the audience member is like, oh man, I wish I could have this to fix this, and this kind of thing.
Yeah, so coming around to final thoughts on Shazam!
Shazam! You broke our equipment again. This is thousands of dollars at this point.
So much smoke.
Oh, get the smoke out of here.
And there's holes in my ceiling now.
Okay, well, thank you. Thankfully, your landlord. Well, we're in the bat jar, so
that's right. We're inside the bat jar.
It just
studio.
cracked the porcelain a little bit. We'll have to give it a paint job and some patchwork.
Well, you said you had to paint it anyway, right?
Yeah. I'll do it. You gotta stop making holes.
Right. I had a blast with Shazam. I think I enjoyed it more than Captain Marvel.
Yep.
Which, again, it's my DC bias is showing a bit, but
no. See, I really like Marvel movies, but I enjoyed Shazam more. Like, I enjoyed the setup for Endgame from Captain Marvel, but I enjoyed Shazam as a movie more than I enjoyed Captain Marvel.
Yeah, it made me laugh. It's a good C-type Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Nice. It has in Freddy's character, it has a really good representation of nerds and geeks.
Yep.
And there's just a really strong message about family that I appreciate. Mm-hmm. So with all the nitpicks I've made and like the fact that it's based on the comics I'm not as fond of, I think I'm going to give it 3.2 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
I'm going to give it a 3.7.
3.7?
I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I'm going to get to a 3.9 at some point, though, and it's going to be pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Endgame's going to hit a 3.9 for me, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other just final thoughts on the movie?
Just highly recommend seeing it. Don't recommend seeing it with young kids, but it is a fun movie, and it's way more enjoyable than you think going into it. It's like a Spider-Verse for me. Like it wasn't like laugh out loud, can't believe no one has seen this movie yet kind of thing, but it's a good movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, Spider-Verse was like a nice surprise. This was a good surprise.
Okay. Well, we already did all our mail, so let's just remind people how they can get a hold of us.
And you should get a hold of us because, as you can see, we are currently reading mail pretty much up to date. So if you want to contact the show with a question or an idea for an episode, and we will put it in the bad jar. We'll put it in there. We'll chock this thing full of ideas. You can send us an email to
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Shazam! Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, just had to do it. Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
And we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music. YouTube was recently added, which is great. Although without YouTube Premium, it's hard to shrink out of that and listen to it while you're doing something else. Stitcher Radio, Spotify, SoundCloud. Basically, if you don't get our podcast where your podcasts are, we can probably add it in. What's another one that you've recently added?
Nothing recently.
Oh, okay, there we go. That's it. Share a post on Facebook. That actually shows up a lot more. We get way more views from you hitting that share button and leaving a review than anything in the world. And I think podcasts live or die on their shares and on their reviews. So do it. Do it.
And subscribe.
Oh, yeah, because, hey, you'll know when we drop a new episode.
Yeah.
And we're pretty consistent, but
yeah,
you're pretty consistent. Let me put it that way. Yeah, and like our page and invite people to like our page because we want everyone inside the Bat Jar. We will expand.
We want everyone inside the Rock of Eternity.
Oh, gosh, no. We'll be stuck there forever. That's what that means. I mean, that's not the worst.
Well, normally we'd go into the Bat Jar to look at our mail. We already did that. We'd normally go into the Bat Jar to decide what we're going to talk about next week, but there's another movie coming out next week. Do you know which one?
I have no clue.
Okay, it's one of the comic book movies coming out this year.
Okay.
It's not Endgame.
Okay.
It's a remake of a movie that came out about 15 years ago.
Is it Fantastic Four?
Nope. The main character is Catholic.
Okay. One second.
Comic book movie, remake from a movie 15 years ago.
Main character's Catholic. Well, now I'm just thinking Nightcrawler.
He has two very different looking hands.
Wow.
He's got a tail.
I'm still thinking Nightcrawler, man.
He's got red skin.
Hellboy.
There you go.
Hey, that's super cool. Man, what is with comic book people portraying the Catholics as demons? Like, you got Nightcrawler, you got Hellboy. I mean, yeah.
Just those two, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, so come back to the Bat Jar podcast next week when we talk about the 2019 version of Hellboy.
All right. I probably won't be able to watch it in time, but you will regale me with tales of the content.
So come back to the Bat Jar podcast next week when we talk about.
Please.
When we talk about Hellboy. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
And I'm Pixel Patch.
Catch you on the flip side.
One pixel at a time.